and welcome to the DM's Travel Book Club, a guide to the inner planes, where each week we look at a different plane of existence as outlined in the Great Wheel cosmology in the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
There
I finally got moves down for the ending part of it, but at the beginning I'm just like, "Whoa," like the dances you
Great
said.
Wheel.
Great wheel.
Start doing cartwheels.
Yeah. Whoa. Anyway, we're here. The
Yes.
final places in the inner planes. We're at the final two quasi-elemental planes, which are
We've been upside down, roundabout, and back again through this. It's everywhere. And
everywhere.
we've left the most happy places, right, to the end? That's what we've done.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. We are in this episode going to explore the quasi-elemental planes of salt and vacuum, or Hoover, depending on what your Salt Bay, Hoover, depending on your brand, etc. God, we are the proper dads of the universe, aren't we?
I wonder if they did make a new quasi-elemental plane of salt primer. They would have there's the they have people of powers. They have the bay, Salt Bay, constantly ever salting a steak at the edge of the universe.
I like that. Yeah, proper just meme it up for the kids,
Exactly.
For us people who are like, what the heck is that? God. But yeah, so here we are. Let's I guess dive into salt, because I did think to myself, salt. I mean, an interesting one. I hadn't really considered that being a particular plane of interest, or even an actual plane. But now we've got it between between sort of water and earth. Is that
Negative.
right?
Oh yeah.
Negative.
Oh yes. Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah. It's
between those two, and then negative as well. Yeah, it's a negative plane. That's right.
That's right. So it's a lovely plane where it does literally, as it says on the tin, that it is basically drawing the water out of anything and everything it can. That is the fundamental of it. It's as you said, it's an interesting one to choose. And if you were going to think of what is the negative of water, salt is exactly that. So it kind of works, but it's not something that you go earth, wind, fire, salt.
That superhero that comes into it, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I guess it's because we talked about steam last time, and that was taking all the heat out of stuff. So now we've got something taking the water out of stuff as well. So I just thought that was an interesting sort of parallel.
Yeah, it does, and it does parallel that. And also, you think of salts are an elemental thing actually in the world, salt, fat, acid when you talk about cooking, but you've also got isn't it an acid and alkaline creates water and salts basically. So salts are a fundamental part of like an acid is. We don't get alkalines in the old D&Ds. I've just noticed.
Yeah,
missing.
I was going to say, yeah. So here, this is a plane of endless need, as you were describing it, that all must fear the touch of salt, all fluids, must fear the touch of salt. And there's even with this idea of touching the all the different sort of planes and stuff, everything is just bad here. So for example, where it touches the plane of water, it comes like a mass, it becomes more and more fluid, but it comes known as the saline sea, where the waves here lap against the fringes of the quasi-elemental plane, drawing so much salt into the water that no mortal creature can live within it, and they risk deadly blood poisoning as a result. And I was like, ooh, because it reminded me of those planes from before. I think it was within the plane of ooze, where you would go in and you wouldn't necessarily be sure about where you would go, or you'd be like, I think we're going to this plane, and you go, and then you just suddenly you just are afflicted because it feels so much like a different region, so to speak. So you're like, oh yeah, the water stuff is fine, and then you're like, oh, I don't feel very well, and then you just float. I just imagine Dead Sea style, just float on the sea.
Exactly, as I think I mentioned at the time we talked about that in the plane of ooze. It was this thing that I saw in a David Attenborough when they show that.
Oh yeah,
they go deep underwater, and it's this eel that goes down into the highly dense salt, and it gets toxic shock, and it completely goes like that, and then it comes back to life again once it's been in the normal water. But it's a great, I think it's in Blue Earth or Blue Planet or something like that. But it's worth a check. Yeah, it's kind of that
horrible. And then in the direction of ice, we've got a blizzard of acidic hail fills the environment, where these frozen pellets would strike painful welts, form and produce ghastly white scars. And this place is known as the Stinging Storm.
Absolutely.
I hate that, because hail in general. I've not experienced it particularly in my new time zone, but in the old time zone, when you got caught out in it, it was painful. But
I had a few painful ones, yeah.
But you wouldn't get white scars from it, That's why I'm like, ooh.
It's a bit I don't know if you at school had a slightly laxed chemistry teacher, because we had one who goes, oh, we're going to do stuff with frozen, what's it called? The ice that you get at
Well, a dry ice.
dry ice. That was it, dry ice. And well, don't touch it. But obviously, all of us went, and I got this white scar on my hand where it like
really?
freeze burn on the palm of my thing. I was such an idiot. But he told us not to do it, but he still gave it to us, and everyone was doing it and going like, how long could you last? And I was like trying to be brave, and I went, oh fuck, that's really bad.
That's painful. Yeah, please don't do that. Do not do that.
Don't do that at home.
Any bits of dry ice you have hanging around the house.
No, not recommended. But that's what it makes me think of, as it's like hail of dry ice. It's kind of how it made me think. But yeah, because it was like it wasn't like a blister that you normally get. It was like a very deep white blister.
Ooh. God, horrible. I like that you could bring that experience into your role play. You're like, okay, we are now in the stinging storm. Everyone roll initiative as you're trying to like get past all these huge big sort of like hailstones. Like, exactly. No good.
The ooze one is, again, brackish. There's a lot of brackish going on here. Brackish water, and it just becomes sludgy, which eats metal, basically, which is kind of fun of the stagnant sea. You've got dust, which creates consumption, which on the other side of dust creates consumption. So they are basically a plane in itself between the two.
It's an immeasurable sandstorm in which dust and salt swirl swiftly around each other. Those who enter can feel the negative effects of both salt and dust breaking apart, even as their moisture is being leached away, so nothing lives here.
So again, dusting and being dried out into jerky. Yeah.
Ugh, grim.
Then you also get the plane of vacuum, which we're going to come on to, and this is where you get the flats, which is salt flats, which just makes you think of like Utah and the world's fastest Indian. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Yeah, the motorcycle film, right?
Motorcycle, yeah.
As someone who hasn't been to those places at all, but like if you look at any salt flats, like images of them, they've got some cracking images of just like desert for miles, but all cracked and just like looks so dangerous. And they are dangerous, but like it's like, oh, this is really beautiful, but also no thank you.
Well, I love how they're also places where people like to drive things super fast as well. Like,
just in case. Like,
what a random connection, you know what I mean? Like, it's what a weird thing to think. Like, you know what we need? Like, let's not do it on a racetrack. You know what we need? Salt flats. You know,
salt flats. Exactly that. Yeah.
And then finally, you get the deadly radiance of negative energy, which is known as the crystal range. Which I love this, because this is the one. It's like, even says how it came to be is a secret I cannot tell, but even a causal glance at the landscape gives the impression that some force gradually draws the quasi-elemental material into the blackened sky. The normal moisture-draining property of the quasi-plane accelerates, leaving a living body can be bled of all liquids in virtually no time, leaving the space dotted with beautiful salt statues of those visitors who died here.
Yeah, horrible. Again, I think I've made that parallel before about like the Medusa's garden. We're like, oh, there's lots of statues there, and people being people being scared and stuff. And then there's like, oh no, so I can imagine here. Like, I guess the only thing I would add here, because it's such a that sort of radiance thing. Maybe it's just it is awe-inspiring, perhaps. So maybe these statues or the husks of people being left behind look like they're in like awe, or sort of like have received some sort of like inspiration or sort of like vision, and then obviously have died. So that point of death, they're like enamored with it. I don't know. Like
there was a thing online which did like loads of short spaces. Someone had written like 100 like 2-paragraph rooms for D&D and like encounter sort of things, and one of them was this, like, you enter like it's like a for planar adventure, so you enter into like a demi-plane, and when you get there all you find is these statues, but they're all like praying, look like they're praying. and they're all statued, and then and there's a temple in the middle, and when you go in the temple there's just a huge basilisk which are meant to fight, which just reminds me of that. So
I love that.
They're all that sort of praying sense, but you could do that, you can make it sort of like I like the idea of the draw to it or something like that. Maybe
sort of trope of it. Yeah, no, I love that idea. Yeah, I think because ultimately those sort of things of like, on the bit of death, everyone looks scared or something like that. I think it's more unnerving to have something that just looks at peace with what's happened, and having that sort of psychological effect. And like, I think because that's such a big trope to be like, oh, it's statues here, it must be a creature that can turn stuff to stone or whatever. So like to turn it on its head a little bit, I like that as well. So the praying thing. Oh, I do like that. That's quite interesting.
Yeah. We've got the physical conditions, though. We've kind of mentioned that we have like it's it's unhospitable and unfriendly. And if you come bearing your precious fluids, we will welcome you most pleasantly.
I love it. Having that as a little sign, come to the plane of salt, we will welcome you most pleasantly. It's like
the motto. The editor goes, ever heard the saying, come into my parlor? I trust I need to say nothing more. It's kind of like, it's very much the Sweeney Todd of it all sort of thing.
Yeah. I would say, like, I can imagine, again, I know we'll come on to, like, inhabitants in a second, but I like the idea that you would roleplay any inhabitants just looking at you very hungrily and goes, your fluid-filled bodies.
They sort of dry sucking sounds, like...
Yeah, they're like almost trying, like, they don't have their own liquids, they don't have their own saliva, but if they could, it's like just a horrible husk noise, and they're like, oh, you look so hydrated today.
Talk like they're really dry voice the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you look so hydrated today.
Moisturizer.
Moisturize me.
Moisturize me. That is the way you enter, isn't it? You have like people go, moisturize me.
But it's not difficult to reach this plane. There are a number of gates for some reason in Sigil.
Some absolute random reason.
It's wild, though, but I guess because it's because it's so potent, this idea of the salt, that you know we need it. Even though, again, I don't know, like you go, honey, we're out of salt. All right, 1 second, and you just go down the shops to get the purest salt. Maybe you're that kind of family that has to have the very special salt rather than the usual
Rachel
one.
always has a box of Malden sea salt in our cupboard.
Ooh, what, the flakes?
The little flake, they're proper stuff.
Ooh.
But I'm not allowed to cook with it. I'm not allowed to.
Yeah, because you just probably go bam.
She's like, I salt bay it, and she's like, nah, you're not allowed to do that. This is proper stuff. She'll put it on her meal. I'm not a big fan of salt. I think you should have salt in moderation. I think it's really bad for you in excesses. And anyway, enough of that. Let's move on. Yes, but it does say that a lot of people Sigil love to buy this salt, and it is mined, and it's one of the things that it comes on to later to say why you would come here is because mine it, and people need the mines to be protected at two like key critical things. The other big portal is in Pelion, which is the third layer of Arborea. And that's where the elves reside in a village known as Coriander.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Which to Americans probably sounds really interesting because, coriander, what's that? Because out there, I think it's called cilantro or...
cilantro, yeah.
Or because is basil irregular? I forget.
Oh, no, look, just because I've moved this time zone does not necessarily mean I'm down with all the lingo.
Coriander to an American does not mean is not cilantro, but obviously is to us just cilantro. Yeah. So it's kind of like, okay. But in this plane, the elves built a town, sort of surrounding, and on both sides of this gate known as the Crystal Triangle. It's a 30-foot on each side. It's an equal-sided triangle, which is not an isosceles, but just an equal-sided. Equilateral. That's the word.
Whoa.
Area. And it's got a garden that runs through it, basically, on both sides. Yeah. And if you try to go through this portal without having the permission of the elves, the ground opens you up and eats you. So there you go.
Classic. You know how it is. But this idea of the grassy field suddenly grabs onto even the strongest creatures and drags them beneath the surface to an early grave. It's just like, I imagine it's that beautiful sort of suburban, like beautiful lawn. This is lovely. And then you take 1 foot on it, and it just like clamps around your foot and slowly just sort of climb up you and just pull you in. But the gate itself it looks like it's been cut from a solid piece of glass. But this true composition, it remains a mystery. So I like the idea that like you could get bits of lens flare, perhaps. It just looks so
J.J.
pure.
Abrams.
Yeah, proper J.J. Abrams stuff. Maybe even you get a slight reflection of yourself as you sort of go towards it. Or maybe it reflects what would happen if you don't have permission or something like that. Like, I don't know. I was just thinking about, like... Because, again, before we've had all these...
It just shows you the dried husk of yourself on the other side.
Yeah, it's like, don't do it. Yeah, it's like, help, don't do it. But yeah, I liked how all of our gates have been very descriptive and like either in like how you opened them or what they look like. I always come back to the one of like unique bones, and you have to add a bone that's not been added before.
Those horses. The horses one, so we have to steal a bone from the horses was the other one that we had, and they come and find you.
Yeah, with the nightmares, right? That was it. That was in the Outer Plains, I think. Yeah.
And then this one, you have to scatter some seeds around its base, which is quite nice. There's little blooms have arisen around it, which has given it another nickname, the Garden Gate. Yeah, and it says you can also additionally vortex quasi salt planes opens from time to time in the center of a dead sea or a great salt flat, etc. So that's kind of interesting.
I like, I just imagine again very cinematically that you're walking across, and there's obviously lots of encounters anyway, and you get to sort of and you're like, here, it must be around here somewhere, and then seeing that vortex sort of coming towards you in the great. Yeah, from miles away. Again, proper Twister style, right? So you can see it coming, and you'd be like, quick, chase after it.
In my mind, I've just got a sandworm, but it's like a saltworm in the salt dunes. And it goes, whoa.
I mean, with all this talk about, like, dragon's breath, a saltworm, the big, like, purple worm S type thing that just comes, a Remoras
when it comes down
one.
and up and just opens up like that, that'd be it.
Yeah, proper dunes. So, you call it. Yeah. That's it. Yes, of course, you call the saltworms.
Yes! You have to get the
and then you have
thumper.
to ride them. Yeah, they're like, and then, yeah.
Amazing. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Many hazards obviously happen. As with all these planes, the biggest one obviously is dehydration. So we talked about it before about that idea that as soon as you're in this plane, just the way the environment is, it just sucks any fluids out, any life-giving fluids, which could mean loads of things, I guess. So I like the idea that maybe you don't really know. Maybe it's a slow acting one. I know it says here with obviously ways to do it, but if you wanted to do it slow acting, like you wouldn't know that. You feel a bit parched and stuff. And maybe if you cut yourself, the blood just starts seeping out of you. It's like just pulling itself
into the
air. Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Absolutely.
I like that. That's cool. Yeah, and it can be horrible. Like if you are particularly from a water plane or you're a water dwelling creature, you're affected so much worse, and you lose one hit die or level per round, which is
it's so cruel.
Insane.
I love that. Yeah, from ooze or ice, you get that. So whereas like I think if it's aquatic in nature, so if you're like a merman or any of those,
that's it. You suffer just twice damage, don't you? That's it.
Yeah, but again, I love that idea that you've lost a level. I'm a big fan of that. It's just like, this is cruel here. Like if you're high level D&D going to these places, let's get rid of that level. And it can come back. Maybe, it comes back after you have a big, long drink of water at some other plane or something like that. But it takes time to restore such vitality to you, because life, water is life, isn't it? So,
but this one actually gives me an idea for like a reason to go through, and we come on to inhabitants slightly later, and I did a little bit of side reading on this inhabitant, the facets, which we'll talk about. But I feel like you got chucked here. This one, unlike this sort of, I don't know, the fire one just seems so immediate, right? It's so like, I'm on fire, right? What are you going to do about it? But you're just going to burn. But if you did play it this way and kind of pushed on this, you're losing hit dice, you're losing level, made it a longer drawn out process. And the thing you have to do, the only way to overcome that is to get to the plane of water. Then you have to go through the saline sea, which is where these facets are, which are this standing army that are ready to invade the plane of water. They want to take all liquid out of the whole of the universe, and they want to start with water. And that's their idea. I don't know why. Why not? And
classic big BBG,
Yeah, exactly. Sort of I want all the liquids. And so you could have to then get past them, and that could be at least some form of like, you're in this salt flat, a desert trudge. We come into other elementals there. It talks about elementals. There are scorpions here, which are the size of elephants.
No, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So there's an instant, first attack. Shit, let's get past that. Now, where are we? Let's try and we see the Castle of Salt, which we'll come on to, which is the Doom Guard's home here. Then we've got get to the saline sea, need to get to the water. I don't know. It feels like this one gives me more of a sense of a progression of a reason to be here. Not be here, but a reason to utilize this as part of a game, which is, and it's something you can very much understand. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's, well, maybe not everyone, but most people have probably been some form of thirsty at some point in their life. And so there is something that you can connect with, and it's a little more, see it as something much more slow wasting rather than fire, or there is no air to breathe, or being crushed by earth. Do you know what I mean?
I love that. Yeah, because if you think back to like a coastal erosion and stuff like that idea that slowly over time the waves will reclaim stuff, that idea that things can be reclaimed, and that's with the water stuff. But I think with salt, a slow killing, decaying thing. Like I'm 100%. Everything goes back to its. I think we talked about it a long time ago. That idea that everything that these in the primer, I think everything's just broken down into its parts, into like the earth, and everything's made up of these things. So I like the idea that it's just slowly breaking them back down to the most basic level, and just taking things and changing them into, like, taking the water to change it back into what's in the water. There's bits of salt and stuff like that. So I think, I just like that as a process, and just slow acting for sure.
Exactly.
So maybe even lulling your players into a false sense of security, which I quite like. So that, we'll be okay here. We found something really interesting, and maybe we could just stay for another day or two, etc.
Yeah.
And just maybe having that psychological effect of like not really knowing when to stop. Because I think sometimes with these planes, it's like, okay, it's really bad, we just get in and out. But maybe there's like, it affects where, again, because some of these planes affect your sense of direction, where you're going, or they look very similar, certainly with the quasi-elemental stuff. So like being here, you're like, I think we'll be okay. I don't feel thirsty. Do you feel thirsty? You know, like I could do another day or two. I could do this, and it's like, you know, it's that it's about you don't know when you're dehydrated until you had the splitting headache later on, right? Or you don't know you've got sunstroke until you sat in the shade for a little bit and go, you know, I should have put on sun cream. So I like that. It is more obvious after the fact,
or once you're in trouble, sort of thing. So
yes, you're like, we should have left 2 hours ago. Yeah.
I love that. The other thing to note was that water, other fluids are contaminated with the start of each hour. You must make a saving throw, or else they become tainted so much they're poisonous. You can't breathe here. There's no air. It's like Earth, and
the way solid
you move
mass
about,
essentially.
It's the same, and so it's just a massive salt. So it's kind of, unless you're at the border of places, and there is obviously pockets of air, but in that regard, you need to have some form of being able to breathe and to move about. You have to like dig through or other ways of going about it. But crystal veins, Fiona, what are those?
Oh man, they're terrifying. Is the answer. Absolutely terrifying. And very similar to a previous one where we talked about like the cobwebs and stuff. I think it was dust. Was that the one that had it?
Yes.
It's similar sort of thing. This idea of like there's almost like glisten, like spun glass, and lace their way these sort of crystal veins throughout the plane of salt, like veins in metal as well. Which again, some incredible images here. And they are very dangerous hazard to anyone moving from the plane. Basically, they act like deadly knives, cleaving travellers in twain before he has even seen them, and bleeding in his water into the hungry ground. So again, I was thinking of as one does, cultural reference style, Resident Evil, the film, where they have like
cut
those
up into pieces,
the lasers. Yeah, exactly that.
Great
exactly
scene.
that.
Yeah.
It's the best scene because you're like,
it's also like that very similar thing happens in Equilibrium, which is at the end when he gets sliced, his face gets sliced off like that. It's such a weird slice, and it kind of goes,
falls off.
You just see inside the. So cool.
So yeah, there's plenty of cultural references you could do if your players get cut up by these crystal veins. But I love it. This idea that you suddenly become almost into like a minefield of like beautiful like salt, which again you can't really see through either. It's like very condensed. Like there's not much light here either, and so you can't necessarily see stuff. And of course, we have finally a table. It's been a little while since we've had these tables, which have like a was it a saving throw versus breath weapon. You know, whatever those means in olden terms. But then you've got 2 tables. If you succeed, as a 1 to 6 from like none to severe injury, which is like 2d8 points of damage. And then failed saving throw is like, which arm do you not want? Let's take the right arm is 7, left arm is 7, all the way down to bisection and decapitation for 5 and 6 if you failed and then roll a d6. I mean, I love that sort of thing. It's very
the bisection one. I would though give people the Darth Maul roll. I'd say, all right, you've got bisection. Roll me a d20. If you get a 20, you Darth Maul it, and you're fine somehow.
Yeah. Somehow it's covered the you still got the bits in there from the bottom bit.
Exactly.
But I it's one of those things because it reminded me so much of the Alien RPG, which obviously I've run several times out, and on the.
I bet that has some great charts for.
It has some, it's got some amazing critical injury charts. But that's the thing is that as a GM for that, as a game mother for that, you don't really decide what the alien does. It has a table such as this, like a 1d6 table, of what it does. It does, it just sort of because it's so unknowable, it's so alien, you can't predict what it's going to do. And obviously I get the players to roll a d6 to see what it does, and a 6 is always a head bite. And my god, it's always the best thing when they go, oh, I've got a 6, and I have to go, oh my god, because obviously there's no save from that. So that's what it reminded me of, this idea that there's just, it's on the player to try and succeed and then not roll high on the d6. And I love stuff like this. Again, lines and veils, Celestial Zeros aside,
all that
but
stuff.
I just love it. And this idea that this is such a cool trap, that I think you'd have to have some sort of sense or some sort of way of trying to sense what they are. That's because they're not necessarily magical either. They're just a natural occurring thing. So I love these. It's similar to the cobweb things we had in the Plane of Dust. These things, the crystal veins, and they're more descriptive because they feel more naturally made. They're sort of like, again, like that sort of veins and ore type thing. I just, love it.
Love it. Yeah, no, it's really good. It makes it just it gives such another level of character to this plane, and good table, well put together.
Good table, and it's not like there's like, because compared to some other tables, there's like 1 to 20 of like this is how big the storm is, and then obviously getting the names of the storms wrong. It's like,
and it's just
keep
so
it simple.
Boring. How many hours and how much that you're like? Nah,
how long does
you could have
this?
done 6 of these.
Yeah, how long does this whirlpool last? A century? Great. This is the stuff we need. Is like, okay, this is really serious. Like, because that's the thing. Like, okay, your left arm is severed. That means you've still got life's blood, going out. So how long do you survive for? And it's like, because you get, not only is it 2d10 damage for like these sorts of things, you also -2 to your dex. So you can't even, it's constantly like sort of building up on each other constantly. And I just,
No, exactly. And I'd rather have 6. We got here 12 really well thought out bits of like things to engage with that give you a little bit something different, like losing dex points or something like that, than centuries of whirlpools, as you say. And then we talk about moving about, but then the inhabitants, I mentioned one, the facets, but we'll come on to those. I guess the first is the Quasielementals, which, like everywhere else, we got some mephits and we've got some elementals. The elemental is the person talking through this, which is not as particularly like affected the wording of this book. It's a couple of moments, but nothing major.
If anything, it's just like, come, it does that sort of like, you should come here, but it doesn't do anything more than that. It's not as aggressive as, say, the Ifrits were in the fire plane or anything like that. So I think I know we joke about it, but I do feel like towards the end they're like, oh, just put anything, just go and try and get this book finished a little bit.
It feels a bit like that, a little bit in some ways. But it says the elementals will have a series of minor kingdoms. It says then the mephits, on the other hand, are very much individualistic, seldom form large communities. But the facets are these ones which look like basically a crystal person.
Yes.
And just made up of a very angular, crystalline version of a humanoid, and they go, and it's sort of bluey tone in the picture, but it doesn't. I assume comes in many forms, but it doesn't say. And then and their whole purpose is to attack water and all liquids in the earth, and that was it really. But they're all, and all of these creatures can exist amongst the whole of the plane. However, the facets stay on the border to water, always ready for their attack. I feel like
how interesting. Like okay, so it's almost like a border control type thing.
Well, they're just readying their forces, and also they multiply as they come into contact with water.
Oh no! Okay, well you didn't start the conversation
to mention that.
That's pretty bad. So but even like again, because it's obviously much more contained than saying like these inhabitants, obviously the salt mephits and the quasi-elementals. There's something there. Like obviously, like you said, the sort of political ballad, like the minor kingdoms versus the sort of freely stuff. So that could be quite interesting to play with, but there's not enough of it, and doesn't really talk about any major political drama other than, like you said, the facets, which are now like they're ready for war, they're ready to go, and they have a very unique gift, as it sounds like, that they'll just multiply on contact of water. It's like not good.
No, and then you get some other little monsters as well. As I said, we have the dangerously large scorpions, the size of elephants, and snakes whose toxins instantly transform you into a moistureless crystal statue, which is lovely. You've got Slogosh, which are wide-mouthed quadrupeds that inhabit the same areas as the facets, feeding upon salt creatures. Basically, nothing they offer no threat, it says. But my people fear the Hlak, a near invisible energy draining parasite. That sounds lovely.
Ooh.
And that's really the fun of it. And there's a couple of, it says other things that are like chrysmals or galabdurs, but I don't know, like crystalline sort of creatures. But
yeah, we've come across them in previous way. I think that was in Earth we had them. So basically again, it always says like, if you're not sure, get a polar bear, put it as a crystal, done. You know, it is very much like that.
Crystal bear.
But the scorpion things again, I guess maybe it's just the way it's talking about that sort of salt plains, that sort of thing. I'm thinking of like the Scorpion King, anything with the mummy and stuff like where you have these very big, horrible things. Maybe there are riders of them, but they are protected in some way and then use them as a way to like, as a full force rushing across these salt plains just to come towards you. The scorpions sound awful to fight. I would not. They're scary anyway, but like an elephant sized. Whoa,
exactly.
Huge.
Not fun. You then, it says that there's a few undead who live here. They formed a small necropoli, which is a cool word to use.
Great word,
where they bask in the proximity of the negative energy plane. I just like the sort of, I've got this idea of like a Costa del Sol for the undead, which I think I mentioned somewhere before in Outer Planes. And it's basically just like these undead all relaxing.
Sunglasses, but they don't have any eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just all like, and everyone's coming up with cocktails, which have just got like eyeballs for glass.
Oh yeah, for the olives and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're just clunk, clunk, clunk.
And it comes out the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. All that sort of classic stuff like Scrooge.
Love it.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, exactly like Scrooge.
So up for that. And you got a major player as well. Tor
Salanus, yes, your favourite. It's a dragon, but more importantly, it is a gigantic brine dragon. I'm big fans of having like, what is a brine dragon? What does that look like? It's is it just like a little bit of like, you just, as you come into the lair, you're like, there's like a bit of vinegary, bit of like salt, like what?
Yeah, exactly. This, you know what? I really do fancy some tuna right now.
Yeah,
for some reason.
That's so true. Yeah. So this particular dragon, they desire to be the only living thing in the Quasielemental plane of salt. They are immune to the normal dehydration stuff, presumably because they are dragon magic.
Yeah.
You know, it's fine.
Dragon brine magic. Yeah.
But again, it fits into that whole thing that dragons, they want to have control of a certain place and stuff like that. So it makes sense that it'll be the quasi salt thing. But then it doesn't really do. Like, it doesn't say, like, what the plan is. So I just like the idea that this dragon is just, like, so sat back on whatever the horde is and just, like, bloody hate it here.
Yeah.
God, I hate all these undead.
I hate people. I hate everyone.
It's like, there's too many tourists. I hate it. Like...
just sitting there complaining. I feel like he's Bin Man. I don't know why, but it's the guy, absolutely. You know, the guy sitting in the bin in the sunshine. That's what I'm imagining, but a dragon just sitting in there complaining. Sorry.
Exactly.
I don't know why. That's what the voice of the
but like, because again, I'm like, oh, what could brine mean? That horrible brine breath. But maybe that's
brine breath.
But then again, maybe it's just a constitution prayer, and you just go, you're paralyzed, or you go knocked unconscious, and that's it. I don't know. It just feels like
preserved.
Oh, preserved. Okay, that might be better. But I'm just thinking because, like, I like the idea that this dragon isn't as strong or scary as the other dragons because it's a brine dragon. Of all things, like, cool.
And then it's going to be much more sloshy. Do you know what I mean? It's going to slosh about.
Slosh about. Yeah. Maybe it almost has like see-through scales, and you can see bits of like like almost like a gelatinous cube sort of thing where you can see things in
its skin's like gherkins.
Yes, absolutely.
Like all like lined and riveted and pocked and stuff like that. Yeah.
God, I want a gherkin right now.
Hello. It's going to have such a great voice of Brian Dragon, isn't it? All that sort of sound. You know. Love it.
Oh dear, oh dear. There are 2 sites as well we could visit. Although again, once the sort of author's like, don't worry about the lair of the dragon. That's you can't go there. There's nothing for you there. Although it would be nice to go, perhaps. But we have I believe it's the Citadel of Salt and the mines, which you sort of referred to earlier. And
some reason called Sialt for some.
Sialt, yeah.
Like for some unnecessary reason of like make it different. I bet.
I did wonder if it was maybe like a spelling mistake, and then they were just like, "No, just keep going with it." But this citadel is one of the Doomguard stuff we sort of talked about before. That in the negative energy quasi-elemental planes is that the Doomguards, that's where they sort of keep various things. So that's probably one of the reasons that you would visit these particular ones, is to see the Doomguard.
And these are the ones that welcome the acceleration of entropic death of the universe, unlike the other ones where we were in dust, where it was all about the reduction and the slowing down of entropy. They still want it to happen, but they want to manage it as best as possible.
Yes.
So in this, they like to sell weapons to the Tanari and Batezu to help intensify the blood war.
Way. Oh, thanks. Sort of funding wars.
Yeah. Nice.
One thing I would say, that it has a very cool description of the actual citadel itself. Like, it is just a giant sculpture. So every room, every turret, every archway is integral parts of this whole object. So I can imagine, again, from your point of view as an architect, is like it's just everything is so smooth and is integrated. It's maybe naturally formed in a certain way. Again, presumably all out. Yeah, it isn't made out of salt. But I just felt something about it that I'm just like, again, I can just imagine that almost like a coral version of it that is just so. It's just made. That's how it's grown. That's how it's just come to be. It's not really sculptured in any particular way.
Of solitude. Or
yeah, exactly. So,
or like the shard.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just so sharp and it's so smooth and maybe even fluid in places. I don't know, but I just thought it would be a really cool place to visit and a cool place to describe as well.
This book is lacking a lot of pictures.
It is.
Really, for someone who's doing a book for Mortborg and every other page is a picture, I'm like, you could have done a couple of pictures. You could have done a few more pictures. But there you go. And then you've got mines, which are just mines, which are full of people who do mining. So there's that. I think there's not much more to say than that, really.
There's a tribe of unfriendly stone giants. Hooray. That's it. It's like, why are they unfriendly? Stone giants are very cool. They walk through dreams. Why? Okay, bye.
Bye. The only really cool bit, actually, as ever, they get to what they do is they get bored. I'm sorry, Monty Cook, apologies, but it feels like they've got bored. They've got to the point that they go, Plane Walk and Salt, let's put all the good shit here. Because they're like, for a paragraph, just write me a paragraph. It's like, really cool. All right, just so that it doesn't look like we've completely fucked it. And
it's like you give it to the editor, go, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? I don't have any more word count. I know, I'll just stuff it in at the end.
Put it in there. Yeah, Plane Walk.
Put it in there.
Because you've got... It tells you then, obviously, like guarding the things. Why would you come here? And then, obviously, about the facets, which says about them in the, when they multiply in cast of water, and maybe eternal as make this an eternal war potentially. But then, and then it goes like, oh, by the way, there might be this power mad Illithid who's stolen a powerful psionic object called Ecstasy's Death, taken it to the Plane of Salt, reportedly buried himself in a dungeon-like abode, surrounded by mind-controlled Salt natives, and a bounty's on his head from some Gisserai and a kingdom of dwarves in the Outlands. And you're like, well, there's the story. That sounds fun.
Like, Illithids and Mind Flayers, sort of like lairs and stuff like that. There's a couple of them in some of the, I can't remember which books they are. I think actually it's Mordekainen's Tome of Foes. Yes, that's it. Sorry, I almost said Foe Toes.
Yeah. It's because
as always the way. And it's quite cool because again, you can't necessarily move without using telepathy, all that sort of thing. So put that in Salt, where it's very hard to move through and stuff. And proper. And also, Ecstasy's Death. What a great name. What does this object do?
Yeah,
what does it do? Don't know. Maybe it turns people into like willing slaves. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. But I like the idea that, again, we were talking before about those creatures who then turn into Salt statues. Again, maybe something along those lines. I don't know. But yeah, and then a mention of Gisserai and dwarves. Yeah. Gisserai, I don't think have been mentioned so far per se. Like we had a bit about Limbo earlier in some bits and pieces, but not like hey, here's a story for them. But so you can either go do this or go join either side of the war. And that's kind of it, as well as obviously maybe getting some salt for your dinner was the other thing. The final thing to say...
I think the banquet idea is a good way of doing this. Like, there's a big banquet in Sigil. We need these things from these planes, and that's an adventure in itself. Like a silly sort of food borg sort of thing. Food
borg, yeah. There's, I mean, I know we've not gone on to it, but there's like the Wendy's food quest thing, and like there's obviously Heroes Feast
stuff. What's there a Wendy's one?
Oh, I'll send it to you afterwards. It's like 100 pages of stuff. Critical Role.
100 pages.
Critical Role did a one shot, and then it got taken down because people didn't like Wendy's for various reasons. Not a story for now, but it's a. I've got it. It's
there's
a cracking
clickbaity epised.
Yeah, absolutely.
Critical Role, Wendy's controversy.
The final thing to say is spell keys. It is possible to overcome some of all of the plane's magic warping effects through the use of spell keys. So, but they take the form of various fluids, which I like in the sense of like they're quickly absorbed and lost, but then your spells can function normally. So I like the idea that you've just got a whole little like again bandolier of like little
fluids.
Test tubes essentially, and then just a quick oil.
Yeah.
Gum,
but the thing is, it says
know.
every hour they're going to be turning into salt, so you've got to be really careful with that. I think there's I think maybe they should allow, like, if you could have a magical container, like a magical thermos.
Lunchbox, yeah, exactly.
Thermox.
The most common of these elixirs are extracts of rare plants or spices, but fluids drawn from living animals are known to be the most efficacious of them all. So like that idea of like they're just
Cut yourself.
Yeah, just get where's little Timmy, the little dog you have with you, like like just like have you seen
not Toto?
Have you seen that when they use cats?
We're far from Kansas now, Toto.
But like, I like the idea that you see those.
That's a completely different movie.
It changes so much. But have you seen those TikTok videos where they've got cats and they use them as guns because they're quite stretchy? So like, and then that's what I imagine. It's like, now be sick, like.
Fiona's been watching way too many of those with Fancy Alice right next to her. Watch it. I will do this to you. So where next? Where next on this?
How about we just go to the end? The empty reach where everything dies, fades, or decays. Let's go finally. Yes, fine. Yes, sounds great. We'll go to the quasi-elemental plane of vacuum, which again. Just sucked out essentially, because even the greatest some things become part of nothing. The end always wins. The plane of vacuum is the end, and we get this sort of point of view from a Doomsguard priest, which I quite like as usual. Like it's just like, again, I imagine it's all in a monotone. Like there is nothing, absolutely nothing.
Great name.
The end. Great.
Phallus Kill Thuman. You can feel that name. Like that's what you need on the Dolby THX sort of thing.
So whilst ash, dust, and salt manifest a slow disintegration of matter, moisture, the plane of vacuum demonstrates the utter lack of everything. When time is over and the universe has decayed into nothingness, all will be as the plane of vacuum. Like, somber.
Yep.
Pretty sad.
Yes, it's pretty sad, and you know what? I would have respected them if they just left it there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I felt like that's what they kind of wanted to do, because they kind of said there's just nothing. The plane of vacuum spits in the face of paralysis before just about everything that a body might find in other inner planes fails to appear here. With a few exceptions, nothing shows up here. And you're like, but if you just said there's nothing, you literally get here and it is emptiness. And you basically float away into nothingness, and you are nothingness.
It is the center of a black star, a black hole, that sort of thing, and you just pull people in, and that's it. And there's no save. Like that, I think that's perfect. And yeah, you're right. But then it goes on to like the physical conditions about getting here. Yeah. No one seeks it. And you're like, fair enough. But there are places to get here. There's very few portals, but there is a small portal called the Howling Gate in Pandemonium. That's what I was thinking of before.
Yes.
And the key to it is simply contact with air. So as a result, it is constantly open, which I love. Again, I can imagine like a big fight with you and the Gasari versus maybe a Slard, and then you just see this gate open.
Different plane.
Different plane.
That's Limbo.
Of course I've got. There you go. Never mind. Whoop, take that out.
Maybe Pandemonium, just the people that there are normally just the they've got a bad name. I think it's called the Crazies or something. I can't remember.
Oh, it is. Yeah. That's right. It's
farmers. The Barmies.
Yeah, Barmies. Yes, that's right. Yeah. That's right. I remember now. Yeah.
But you're just in Winglum fighting off.
I'm just constantly in Winglum. I think we're all in Winglum, to be honest with you.
Well, you've moved away from Winglum. You're now in Americas. I think Winglum is Britain.
I'm still well, I don't know. It's a different kind of Winglum here, I think. But regardless, going back then to Pandemonium itself, that again, that's howling gale, which is then not only is it so strong, these gales, that you could be pushed off your feet, but also you can't hear anything either. So again, this portal opening and you're getting sucked into it, threatening to yank a careless traveler through this into suffocating abyss beyond. Yeah, what an ending! What a
you'd be like,
fight.
Calm. Oh,
dead.
Yeah, that's it. And it's like, oh, bugger. It does mention spelljammers a few times in this now, actually, a number of times, but it mentions the phlogiston and says that potentially whilst you're traveling between those planes in the phlogiston, which is different to vacuum, there would be vortices there, so that is somewhere to find them. But the hazards are interesting again, because it does say, like, it's not vacuum, and it says greybeards for scientists, and it says, like, when we think of vacuum of space, the whole idea that there's no in a complete, because space isn't actually a full vacuum, acts a bit more like that in a sense. But if you went into a true vacuum chamber, you get exploded basically as your body, and it's kind of awful. And you get really, there's no transmission of temperature, so you freeze completely as well. But it says here that actually there is a lack of air, there is still pressure and a constant temperature, which is the former pressure is slight and the latter temperature is cool, so it could be so much worse, which is kind of interesting for some
I'm surprised
unknown reason. But I kind of feel like it's not quite the negative energy plane, so it kind of has to have something to it. It's still on a transition from air to negative energy, and I feel like, but it feels a bit, I don't know, I think there's something to be said about, I don't know, it's been philosophical or not, but like nothingness. We talk about cool in architecture and stuff like that, and we talk about like ice draining the heat from you, but vacuum doesn't do that, which I kind of like, in the sense that its nothingness is its blandness, is the sort of like, it is a stable temp. It is a nothingness of like, it doesn't even take the heat from you, it doesn't even take the cold from you, because there's nothing for it to, there's no transference in that. So I kind of see it in that, on that flip side.
Interesting. So I guess maybe then the fear of going to such a place because you think you're going to get exploded or frozen, and then you're here because it's so much worse than that.
Because there is literally nothing.
There's just nothing. So like, death is the end for sure. But then like, it's like, well, there's nothing else here.
What I would say that could make it worse is you don't die.
Yeah, exactly.
Float endlessly, and there is no way out.
Is it? I can't remember.
That's horrific.
I can't remember the film now, but the one with Julia Roberts, I think it is, in space with George Clooney, and
You're thinking of the wondrous Sandra Bullock in Gravity.
There you go. I was like, Julia Roberts, no, but yeah, that bit of me where she just floats off into space and keeps turning and turning. So maybe that's the thing here, is that if you're flying back and you're starting to spin because there's no gravity, then you don't stop spinning.
That portal, and you can see that portal, but the wind is so strong. There's nothing for you to, if you can, in the amount of time, figure out that down is that way, maybe you'd be able to make it back. But that's like a thought process you've got to go through. And you might be lucky, and maybe you do float endless. Maybe that's, and then they could have made that the story. And then when we come to there's the Citadel, which is the Doomguard Citadel, Exhalus, or Exhalus. They could say that one of their like jobs is going to try and search the void on Tether to try and find people. It is infinite, but they do have like they have like people who do come here because they've just been floating for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Like
a search and rescue, trying to find maybe salvage as well. The spelljammers that have gone in and stuff like that. Because this is the other thing, is that the other sort of
that in the nothingness, you just see this.
Like Titanic-esque.
This is a ship, and it's a ship of these people who have been trapped there for years, and it like for generations, thousands of years, floating in the void. And they're like, that'd be such a great like little bit of like.
I like that. I hadn't thought of that before, the idea of like salvaging or trying to rescue or something like that. And it's just these people are just stranded there, and like what happened to them and stuff. But then the other sort of hazard that it talks about, which I do think is really cool, is this vacuum welding sort of hazards. That idea that the inanimate objects becomes most apparent, like in sort of mechanisms. So it affects anything such from the joints of a suit, a plate of armor, to the mechanical limbs of a clockwork horror. So anything that has joints, essentially. For each hour that these mechanisms of any complexity spends in the vacuum, saving throw versus acid is required, of course. If the device is simple, like a knee joint, a +4 is applied to the roll. Yeah. So again, think about that. Complex have a -4. And then failure at the same time indicates that the object in question has frozen up and is no longer able to move. And repairs are possible, but after the object is but only after the object is removed from the breathable atmosphere. So that idea that if you are in some sort of space suit or armor and you fail and you're just locked up and you can't move, again, just a sitting target for anything to come and like eat you, or you can't save yourself from spinning into things and be damaging. Again, whilst we say that there's nothing in the vacuum, I do like the idea that there are broken up spelljammers now, there's just stuff, like a whole what's the word I'm thinking of, like not an asteroid field, but a field of these things that you're just going to crash into and hurt yourself to the point where you just smash into smithereens. So
I love it. I actually quite like that. That makes it. We made it better.
We made it better, I think. Yeah.
It says that there's. They say that there's quasi-elementals which have all died out, which is kind of sad. And that's the way of vacuum. When one battles here, it is over such basic concepts as existence or non-existence. Bloody hell.
Very philosophical.
Yeah. There's a very few monsters as well. There are some vacuum elementals, even though people will tell you otherwise. They're very few and far between. And it said, a handful of other monsters found here similar to those which Spelljammers reported encountering in Great Voids Between Worlds. So it makes me think of like astral dreadnoughts, and the sea whales. I've forgotten the space whales. I've forgotten their names.
I know which ones you mean. They're in the Spelljammer book, aren't they? Yeah.
So those kind of things. But astral dreadnoughts is kind of what I was going for, like the huge war thing, which is
just out of the darkness. Yeah.
Features in Critical Role season 2, I think. Believe at the end. Yeah.
But then it's in the Animals and Monsters bit. They talked about another hazard, which is annoying because I think it should be in the hazards part. But this Igarus fungus that thrives on nothingness because of its need for the absence of matter. It reacts badly to material objects and even energy. So again, it doesn't really describe what they do. It just simply takes away stuff. And so maybe it is like that whole thing where you start to see your body start to slowly but surely sort of like eat away at itself because this fungus, this invisible fungus, I don't know, like just starts to eat away instead of take you over.
I think it just takes over your existence. So I think it says only the foolish remain around the fungal growth long enough to find out what it can do to rectify their existence.
Wow. So going back to that sort of philosophical sort of way of talking about
you. Whoa. I've made that in my Morkborg. I've made that one of these blood curses you can do, which you have to put it or not. But I want to share this to you because I made the super high level power, like made these new magic things, and one of them is Undone. It's called Undone. Like all the other ones, like Exsanguinate and like Freeze and stuff like that. And the Undone one is like whoever it happens to as a player has to, everything they've done, you share all their XP with the other players. You have to take all of their gear, and it's as if they never existed.
Wow.
And that's it. Like the whole thing. Like I was like, I want to do that to someone because that's kind of like so cool to do to a player. Be like, you've never existed. You never did exist. Everything you ever had. All the players did it themselves, and they now remember the story as if they did it and triumphed on their own, or something like that. And I was like, So I kind of feel like that's what you do with this, basically.
Oh, scary. Don't like that at all.
Yeah. But that's part of it, right? So maybe that's the thing. You're floating in this endless void, but at least people will remember me. and then their fungus turns up and like, nope, not anymore.
Well, I was thinking because it talks about other races like ghosts and the like swooping down. But I like the idea because, like, again, I appreciate you might not have seen this film, but there's a film called Talk to Me, which is the idea that you grasp like a dead person's hand sort of thing and you talk to them. Spoiler for the end, but the person that then dies is then in this very horrible dark place, and then they get called through because someone has then started the game again. That idea that they're holding on to someone's hand. So I like the idea that maybe when we hear about ghosts and the idea of seances and stuff like that, maybe that they're all here like those who have unfinished business are stuck here in the vacuum, and then they get called through, or there'll be something, a trigger that they come back into the material plane, whether it's because someone's walked into the dungeon or they've walked into this place. But this is where they reside when they're not being called, so to speak. Horrible. Don't like it. Yeah. Whoops.
We're making it better though. That's the thing. That's the thing. We're making it more interesting. And yeah, undead creatures known as vacuous hunt the empty waste looking for stragglers to destroy. That's nice.
Yeah, I also like being called vacuous, I'll be honest. That's my normal go-to sort of mindset, I think.
Exactly.
Major players. There are still people here. Like, this is the thing. Like, you don't expect it. There's Sunsing, a mysterious creature that lives at the heart of a negative energy pocket. Exactly how they survive in such a place is a mystery that many folk would love to unravel. No one knows for sure who or what Sunsing is. The chant in some circles is that they are the last surviving void method, and having survived, becoming nearly as powerful as an arcomental. Some say that they're a lich or a demi-lich who's retreated here to escape all contact with the living. Ooh. What a name as well. Like, it's a happy, you know.
Yay! Sun singing. Yay. No.
But it's like, I like the idea that, because it doesn't really say like what, they're just evil. But it doesn't say like what their plans do, but maybe that idea that they've isolated themselves for some reason. Maybe they're plotting something, or maybe the adventurers go and they're like, oh, so there are people out there still. I shall come and visit your worlds. Yes, no, I will, and I will make them mine. Yes, because that's what I want. You know, that idea of like, maybe just they've forgotten and they kept themselves away, and then suddenly the adventurers come in and they're like, there is something out there. Yes, you've made me want to live again. I will come to your worlds. And you're like, no, don't come. You stay here. You know, stay indoors.
Yeah, that's safer to stay in vacuum. Where you yeah.
Yes.
The next one though, Zao. I like Zao the Destroyer.
Zao the Destroyer, absolutely. Beholder. It's nice to have a beholder back in. They're twice the size of a normal kin of a beholder. So. They're quite big anyway.
Yeah, they're pretty big, and you get -4 penalty to any of the saving throws, and all the abilities ranges is doubled, which is nice, and immune to vacuum. And there's 36 normal beholders who act as guards.
Just normal, like, all right, brethren, let us go, let us ride, you know. But their fortress as well stands on a tumbling fragment of elemental ice. I want to see again. How does that work? Because if it's tumbling, if it's moving, I guess like that spacing we were talking about before. And very cool. I can imagine it. Yeah, again, if you're with the Doom Guard, you're like, we got to go out and talk to Zao the Destroyer again, and there's some sort of weekly like debate and stuff. I don't know, like.
Didn't we find that anything that gets disintegrated goes to the negative energy plane? Was that what we found out the other day? Or they went to a plane? Didn't they go somewhere?
They went to some sort of we thought about the ooze place, whether like all the things that are disintegrated, whether it ends up like food waste ends up in the ooze stuff, and we talked about the rust thing, the rust pile, whereby like maybe
and there's a place, or is there there's a place in, isn't it in Archeon where they all go? There's like all the weapons and stuff like that, everything that's ever been disintegrated just ends up actually in this plane.
The rust pile. I think that's what it's called.
That's what it is. Yeah, the rust pile. Yeah, that's it. So I don't know. I was just thinking that, because I was just wondering if it was this plane or not, but it wasn't, because obviously
it could be though.
The beholder has a disintegration ray, and I was just wondering if you just disintegrate someone and then they just turn up next to it.
Next to it. Yeah. Well, I like the idea that it's not as empty as we think it is because of the because I said like bits of spell jammer and stuff. Again, maybe you could like foreshadow Zao the Destroyer, like there's big chunks of stuff being taken out but almost very cleanly because of the eye stalk rays, stuff like that, because again, one of the other sort of things that indicates that beholders that is like the statues, the idea that there's a petrified thing, so maybe there's petrified individuals on these boats as well when there's been a beholder attack, love that idea.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. That's very cool. And then the sites I mentioned it very briefly. Citadel Exhalus. So there's obviously the fortress we mentioned as well from Zal, but this is the Doom Guard's impressive fortress. It's or known as the Portal of the Last Breath, built around a special gate. Exhalus allows us to commune directly with the ultimate destroyer, the negative energy plane.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
And they believe that the disintegration of multiverse proceeds on schedule and see no reason to hurry things along. So it's the classic, like, one wants it to slow down, one wants it to speed up, one thinks it's just right. So the Goldilocks of the Doom Guard here.
Love that.
And it says also the Heralds of Dust come here to the plane to revere the plane of negative energy because it's from safety of the Citadel. It says the dead make surprisingly polite and trustworthy friends. The Citadel provides a home to about 200 of them, of the Doom Guard, and holds a portal not only to Citadel but to 5 or 6 other places in multiverses, which they have influence, which would be obviously like the other negative energy planes.
Yeah.
You imagine. They have a collection of spheres of annihilation.
Why? Why do you just keep those all together? And then you go, someone's taken one out and it's missing. Like, oh, yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah, he goes, we were not completely lost at the recent battle. Yeah, which were not. And he goes, the We Doom God just smile knowingly when asked about it. That's not terrifying.
Scary stuff. I think, when you're talking about that gate before the portal of the last breath, again, I can just imagine it that you arrive for whatever reason on some other errand, and you can see someone's going through like some sort of ritual that they've come to their peace and they know it's their time, and then you just go through like almost like a gate that just has a curtain or something like that, and you just go through and that's that. They've just disintegrated because it goes to that negative energy plane. Just, I think just using that as just demonstrating what it does for people to see that it is a part of life, and it's a part of the things when only special people get to go through, and it's maybe reserved for the highest Doomsguard who've pledged their life and they've come to the end of maybe their retirement, and they're like, happy retirement, you get to go through the portal of the last breath.
Well, just like the undead at their beach, this is the Heralds of Dust home, like retirement isle, Cornwall, for the Heralds of Dust. I mean, to be honest, it is a bit of a plane of that. Anyway, just moving on. Cornwall's fine. I like Cornwall. It's nice. Sorry. Again, they put a good tidbit in the Planewalkers bit, where it has the Tomb of Sark. It's a powerful king, utterly consumed with the idea of keeping his wealth with him after his death. So obsessed was he that he bade his sorceress lieutenants to cast his entire treasure-laden tomb into the plane of vacuum to endlessly float. And the folks who believe this to be a foolish tale think this is only there to send addle-cold bashers to their doom. But it could be true.
But you know what I like? Again, going back to the ghost idea, that's where he is. Like you go through the tomb, you find it, and then he is there going aha, and then like I don't know, a big battle ensues with a ghost that's so obsessed with material wealth that they can't rest at all until they're destroyed. Like again, a very cool. Adventure hook. Would have been nice to have a bit more information about this person somewhere else. I don't know, because they're not necessarily native to the plane of vacuum, but I was like, oh, interesting. But yeah,
that's it, isn't it? It's very much DIY it in a sense. What were the spell keys? You love the spell keys.
I love the spell keys. So we've had this sort of book before, this idea of vapors being used essentially to because spells keys are difficult to employ because obviously it is the end, it is the stuff. But the difficulty in using these fumes beyond storing them and transporting them lies in the fact that they must be exhaled to take effect. So the majority of these ones are noxious and toxic as well. So again, it's like it is such a risk to use spells here, to use it, that it has to be like, again, I would maybe have like some sort of table to be like, okay, you take a d6 worth of damage, or depending on the level of the spell, for example, maybe 2d8 or something like that. Like I think that would be quite good to see, because it's such a risk that you are willing to take damage to use your spell slot to do a spell, which maybe then would have a bit bigger effect, perhaps, so it goes off better because you've risked so much. I don't know, but I'm always a big fan of like taking some damage or losing an experience level or anything like that, or gaining a level of exhaustion to take something off in some place that is such as this place, which is so inhospitable and unfriendly, and you just don't want to be here. So you're trying to get out of this. So like plane shift, for example, like you take that spell, you want to make sure that everyone's in on it. And if it's so bad that you might be knocked unconscious, well then, is it worth the risk? So
exactly. And the only thing I'd say additional to this is the piece of artwork at the end of this book is actually quite cool. I like it.
Yes, I
agree.
Sort of
floating rock in this sort of swirling galaxy-looking cloud thing. It's very cool. Yeah. More of that, please.
More artwork, as we sort of described. Well, there you go. We've done it.
We're back in Sigil. Can we go back to Sigil now?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Oh. Good gosh. All right. What a great holiday. Thanks, Hamilton. Thanks for traveling with me. I appreciate it.
That's all right. Thank you for coming along with me as well. I was, It's been a what? It's been a ride. I feel like it's been. I feel like it's been. I think it's like been personally as a. I think it's not been as successful a journey as the previous journey. I think
what makes you say that?
I think from the book's point of view, I think we've done really well. Okay, I look at us and I think we've made every single one of these planes really good,
a lot better,
and I feel like that's my overall takeaway, and I feel really sad saying that because I really love Planescape and I really enjoyed reading the books again, but I did feel these ones were a bit more of a slog compared to the last one, and I think and so I'm glad that we've done this because then we've made them more fun by talking about them. So that's my sort of takeaway on that.
I think I agree with something that you said a previous episodes ago, which was like when we started doing like the Quasielemental and the Para-Elemental, what would have been nice is that if we'd been able to see them in the elemental planes, like these regions, because it gets to a point where it gets so granular that there's not much in them, and that's a shame. Exactly. Whereas these could be put into like the negative energy plane, or like I think like the ones I was thinking of, like the air, like they have all those sort of they take those what the counterparts and put them as regions and just expand it out from there, because then it makes it feel like a fuller plane, and maybe getting rid of some of these little region stuff. Like I love the names of them, but they're not enough to be like it's a one encounter for your party, and then they get through it. That's kind of it. And you're like, well, but you got some great names like Consumption. What a great name. The Sparkling Mire. All these sort of names which seem to evoke something, but then there's not much to go on, which is a shame.
I really would love just a big map, exactly as you said, and it just goes, you have the positive and negative energy plane, and then you just have the four main planes, but then they spread out into their quasi, and then they sort of merge at the merging lines and stuff like that, and the magma is on both. But or you just put magma with fire because it makes so much more sense, and you do the earth, or you just, I don't know, I feel like a grand map would be a so much cooler thing with different and all those sorts of elements of them happening as like you just traversing from one of these places to the other, and it's a big whole thing. And you showed, you were asking me the other day for the Age of Sigmar one, and I sent you the Grand Parch, I believe, which is so it's the embodiment of literal and non-literal fire. So it's a place of so Ashgree is like a plane. It's their sort of emotion and sensation is the magic it comes from, but it deals with all these things about fire, but in that, and everything they said elemental and non-elemental of that. And so you have like the Great Parch, as I said, like a plane which is all like a big desert, but it's got a magma field and it's got magma dragons coming out of it, and a huge, and it's kind of great. And I totally agree. That would have been the best way to have done it, maybe.
And for those people who aren't familiar with like Age of Sigmar stuff, as I was not, I'm thinking of stuff like, you think about like Dimension 20, Crown of Candy, which then just created all these big maps, and it was like like the Great Butterfields and all that sort of thing, Vegetania, that sort of thing, where it's just like a little bit of theme stuff, great great sort of concepts of, which are then fleshed out obviously during the campaigns as well.
Well, even the outer planes were more like that, they had more of that sort of like fundamentals to their plane, and then they had the layers and they had spaces amongst them, and it was all about the singular concept running all the way through it, but in different interpretations of it. So it's it's just a shame, really.
Do you have a particular favourite plane that we visited in this run at all?
That is a tough question. I think I think we actually. I'm trying to go back and remind myself quickly of the ones that we did, but I think we enjoyed Ash, didn't we? Was that the one? That's the one we enjoyed a lot, didn't we?
I think well, there was Ash and Dust, which we talked about quite a lot about.
Yeah.
They seemed very similar, but they're actually quite different.
Yeah.
And that was quite. I enjoyed talking about that one, those ones, because we actually made so much from them, and it was actually really interesting. And yeah, I do love Dust's like cobwebs. Hazards, because I thought that was quite interesting. But for me, I'll say it, I love Ooze. I think Ooze is great. I think I thought
Ooze was a lot of fun, because that was much more like, they've brought a lot out of Ooze, and they've kind of did well with that.
I mean, I also really liked, which I know maybe is a bit of a get up in, but I did actually really like the positive and negative elements, because we don't really have that in modern D&D, and I just like the concept of like you said, like you are so good and you are so healed that you just turn into a light being, and that's like, that's so different. Like, again, something I don't necessarily see. So I like the bit between the two, and so I definitely would like to play with those a bit more, I think. And even just like, I know, again, maybe a cop out perhaps, but the elemental planes, I actually really enjoyed water. When we thought about it, this idea of creatures being so big because there's not the pressure of gravity. So you have these massive sharks, you have these massive like octopuses and stuff like that. I just thought that was so different, and you didn't have the pressure of the things like, and because that had, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, did that not have the sigil equivalent, like the city of mirrors or something like that? I can't remember off the top of my head.
City of Glass, I thought, wasn't it?
Glass.
Yeah, and it's no, I agree. I like those ones, and I think the main elemental ones were actually rather good. You know, they had a lot to
it's really
them,
solid,
and they were pretty solid ones. And I think it just, as you say, I think is going from the sort of main planes, the positive, negative planes, then slowly as you go through para, then quasi, they sort of fluctuate a bit between those, and it's a bit of an up and down as to if you get a good one or not. And it's not necessarily collating and expanding upon different elements of each of them would have been a better stuff.
Exactly. I think so. But I am very glad that we've got through all of them, and because I do feel like there are now ideas and stuff. Like I've always said this, whenever we go through these sort of planes, I actually I'm like, because I didn't read Planescape when it first came out, and I'm fairly new to coming to this sort of D&D stuff with the lore stuff, so I'm like, so many interesting things. And we said it before when we looked at Spelljammer, the original sort of second edition stuff, and how interesting that was, and then comparing it with like the new Spelljammer and how that didn't match up, because we came up with so many cool ideas based off the old one. And similarly, like, I do think that the new Planescape books, I think they're really good, and I actually really enjoyed them. And I like how that's, I mean, and maybe it sounds really silly perhaps to say this, but like, I really enjoyed reading both the old edition and the new stuff. It doesn't have to be just this is just the 5th edition stuff. And because I know a lot of times when we have people watch this, they go, you should read the older versions, you can read the old versions, and whilst we don't necessarily agree with certain bits of the legacy content, that's absolutely fine, but it makes me go, that's such a different idea to what I expected. How would I put that for my DMing and my group of people? And just again, long story short, do read more books, which I know sounds so silly, but like, don't be put off by it, don't be put off by like how it says like versus breath weapon, or ridiculous tables which you will never use, or how it goes from we're going to be in a character, but here's all the stuff for the DM. Like, again, it can be quite jarring at times. That I found I was a bit like, I'm not sure what the aim of the point of view was. But
that's very true.
I enjoy, as I've always said to you, I enjoy the vocabulary. I like calling people Burks. I like having put into a place where it clearly has its own system, its own vocab, its own way of dealing with things, and its own philosophies, as we sort of discussed with our faction episodes. So I've really enjoyed going back through it and thinking about like you can take these things and make your own stuff, and then leave out the stuff you don't want and put stuff in. And it's quite nice to both read the old stuff and the new stuff, and then put it together. So would highly recommend checking these books out. And especially with this inner plane stuff, it is much shorter than the outer plane stuff, which I was very much appreciative of when we're doing recaps. So
yeah, definitely 100%. And like, I mean, we did some of those planes did take a lot of time, but I agree with your point entirely. I think it's I've been always a proponent of getting back to the older books and understanding, as you said, there's always massive caveats about, the things that there are some of them which I won't go back and read personally. I'm not really interested in going to read, and I'm not interested in like Dark Sun that much as well. But as you say, it's like I like going to my charity shop and buying crap fantasy novels from the 70s, mainly based on the fact they got really cool art on the front cover, and reading those. And I probably won't finish most of them, but I'll read a good chunk of it and get bored at a point. But what I will gain from it is like just something out of just someone else's idea or take on it. Or it's like, particularly if you're a GM or even if you're a player as well, you're not going to go away from anything empty-handed. You're always going to come back with something, and these are bountiful. And but and even this Inner Planes one, even though I think I'm being harsher on it because of how much I love the other books, the Outer Plane books, and how much they really I don't know, they instill a joy in me that I can't really describe to a certain extent, in sense of like they really fill me with wonder and like an idea of, and back to my childhood gaming, I guess, as well. So like there's something special about them, but they're filled with really interesting concepts, really different ways of looking at fantasy, because it can get a bit knights and chivalry,
dragons and
all that sort of stuff, and monsters that are very much like the ones you've seen. But coming here and finding there were the Yagras, which come along and just like floating around and taking away negative energy and stuff like that. It just is all going to help your brain box build more stuff.
Yeah. Although you have put in my brain that the phrase "your princess is on another plane" now as a result. Yeah. Your prince or princess is on another plane. So there you go. We've done it. We've finally come home. We've finished Inner Planes for now. I think is the right thing to say that, because there are some other planes out there.
There are. There's some intriguingly good ones. There's the ethereal plane, which connects the material planes to these planes that we've just been, the Inner Planes, and then there's the astral sea, which connects the material plane to all of the outer planes, and gets all a bit confused with spelljammers and not, because there are spelljammers there and they're also in the phlogiston. So we'll just
it's a bit like whoa, but we've talked about it, and we think we will come back to them, because they both have their individual books for Planescape. So it might take maybe 1 or 2 episodes just to go through and have a real good deep dive, because it's so true, because I get them mixed up all the time, and I know they're very different. So we should get to it, just to round off.
It's always easy to remember. Ethereal is Fiona, astral is Hamilton. That's how I think about it. Ethereal's where all the ghouls and ghosts and stuff like that live, and then the astral's like all color swirls and
spelljammers. Okay, exactly. I get you.
But the other one is the monstrous companions as well. That might be worth having a look through another time. But it's probably time that we've had our jaunt to get back to some actual D&D. You know what I mean? Like some current D&D. We've been away. Because I've not been keeping up with like Unearthed Arcana. We haven't been looking at. There's Vecna back. And
Vecna's come back, guys. Yeah, we saw them in we saw them in the Dust Plane, and now they're back a little bit now.
Yeah, exactly. We awoke them. It was our fault.
Oh, sorry, mates. Oh, sorry. But well, yes, we'll definitely go back and do some more modern quotation mark D&D. I was having a look at what's current right now. But if you are interested to see what else we've been doing, check out our sibling podcast, the DM's Book Club, which there'll be links to on the screen just here. You can also check out our previous travel book club, which was the Outer Planes, which we did a couple of years ago now. But again, you can go check that out on YouTube as well. And there you go. I think a cup of tea and a nice lie down, and then we'll be off for another adventure again. So.
Exactly. You go unpack my bags just to repack them again.
Are you one of those people that unpacks them immediately, or do you leave it for a couple of days?
Oh no, if I don't do it immediately, it doesn't happen.
I'm on the same boat as you. I cannot abide people just go boof, and then about 3 days later, it's still not unpacked. I'm like, just get it unpacked.
I used to be that person, and I hated it so much that I now first thing I do when I get back is just keep going. Don't stop. Don't sit down until it's unpacked.
That's literally it. Like, you just
I'm not gonna lie. 50% of it goes straight in the wash, so that's an easy one.
It's easy. I mean? I don't know why people don't do it. It's just like quick into the wash. That's fine. And then just put your charges back. All done.
Exactly. So true. Well, that's great. Well, I don't think there's anything else to say, is there, Fiona?
Except for
see you
on the flip side
Of the
inner
planes?
planes. Yeah.
But will we? Because this is the last one.
Who knows? Who knows?
We'll see you on the flip side.
See you on the flip side. Bye.
Bye.